The question of who stands in the third position takes longer to resolve than I expected. I want to record that honestly because I have been reconstructing the sequence carefully in my notes. And the honest version is that we stood on the rock shelf for approximately 8 minutes after Hannah identified the missing coordinate before anyone moved toward it. The system was running, the stone was lit, the center mass point was brighter than it had been. And the three of us stood there as though the decision required something we had not yet established. It was not fear, exactly. I have been trying to find the right word for it since we left the shelf, and I have not found one. Something closer to the pause before a significant act when you are aware the act cannot be undone. The system had acknowledged our understanding. The stone had confirmed the geometry. All that remained was for someone to stand between the two key positions and complete the configuration. The question was who? I want to record the logic of that question before I record how it was answered, because the logic has implications for what the system was waiting for. The two key positions are defined. The guidelines prepared them. The amber arcs lit them. The system has known since the guidelines self-completed that those two positions would be occupied by the narrator and Hannah. There is a recorded history to those positions: assessment pauses, witness registration, the offshore structure's confirmation. The system knows who has been holding those keys. The third position has no guide. The amber did not prepare it. The system has provided no specification for what goes there except the geometry itself. A location between and below the two arc terminations, a point the arcs approach but do not complete. The system knows where the position is. The system has acknowledged that we know where the position is. What the system has not specified is whose position it is. That is what took 8 minutes. Maren has been present at every significant event since she came aboard the Morwenna. She was present at the assessment pause. She was recorded as a witness by the system at the 17-second offshore cycle. She warned us about the alignment mechanics, the contact windows, the procedural risks. She has procedural knowledge of the system that neither Hannah nor I have. She has made mistakes in this investigation before. She said so herself. She survived them. She has also been careful not to occupy any functional position in the investigation. She has stood outside the active geometry at every point. She has never placed herself between the investigators and the mechanism. She has been witness, not participant. I ask her simply, is the third position yours? She looks at the center mass point. She looks at the fitting geometry. She looks at the space below the arc terminations. She says no. She says it without inflection, not a refusal, a fact. The third position is not hers. She knows this the way she knows the procedural elements. From experience, from observation, from the history of having been near this system long enough to understand what it requires. She says, the system already recorded 3 witnesses at the assessment pause. That record is what the offshore structure confirmed. She pauses. The third position isn't for a witness. It's for something the system hasn't recorded yet. I wait. She says, someone who has not been registered by this site. I look at Hannah. Hannah looks at me. We have both been registered. The assessment pause recorded 3 people present on this shelf. The offshore structure confirmed that record. The placement attempt in episode 73 was made by 2 registered investigators. The system wrote as much of the consequence mark as the 2 of us could produce. Someone who has not been registered. I look at Maren. She has positioned herself outside the active geometry since she arrived. She has been present at every assessment pause, but she has never been in the placement zone when the system ran its count. She was behind us during the placement attempt. She was at the water's edge during the assessment pauses. She has been at this site consistently and deliberately adjacent to the mechanism without entering it. Whether that was procedural caution or something else entirely, I cannot determine. But the implication of what she just said is that she has managed her own registration status throughout this investigation. She has not been registered by this site. I ask her if that was intentional. She is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "It was necessary." She does not explain why. She looks at the center mass point. I write, "Maren Souls, unregistered at this site. Presence at assessment, pauses insufficient for registration, position outside active geometry. Third position requires unregistered witness. This was apparently known and managed." Maren moves to the fitting. She does not take a key. She does not carry anything. She walks from the water's edge where she has been standing, and she stops at the edge of the fitting geometry, and she looks at the center mass point from the outside of the space for a moment. She says, "Position yourselves first." Hannah moves to the north side with key 47. I move to the south side with the altered key. The same configuration as the placement attempt. Flatten the palms, bow upward, blades toward the fitting. The stone vibration running its two frequencies, the bass interval and the recognition harmonic, both steady. The amber guide arcs brighten on our approach the same way they brightened before. The arcs confirming the key orientations. The center mass point bright and waiting. Maren looks at the center point. She looks at where her feet would be. She looks at the space. She says very quietly to no one in particular, "I've been near this for a long time." That is not a procedural statement. It is the only personal thing she has said since she came aboard the Morwenna. I note it without responding to it. Then she steps into the third position. The stone responds before her second foot is fully planted, not violently, not with any sound that was not already present. The two frequencies deepen simultaneously. The bass interval becomes more present, the recognition harmonic becomes clearer, and a third frequency emerges between them, not higher than the harmonic and not lower than the bass. Between, a middle frequency that I have not documented before, that fills the space in the stone's chord, the same way Maren's position fills the space in the fitting geometry. 3 frequencies, 3 positions, the same structural logic. Hannah inhales sharply. I watch her rather than the stone because I want to document her response as a confirmation independent of my own. Her eyes go to the center mass point first, then to Maren, then to the fitting. Her posture changes, a slight drop in the shoulders, the way a person relaxes when a tension they have been holding resolves. She registers the third frequency as real, not a vibration she is expecting and therefore feeling. A vibration she was not prepared for and felt anyway. The amber center mass point does not brighten further. It does something different. It stabilizes. The flickering quality I had barely noticed, a slight variation in the amber light that I had been registering as ambient rather than systemic, stops. The center becomes steady, a held note rather than a searching one. The fitting is complete. 3 positions occupied. 2 artifacts in 2 hands. 1 unregistered presence in the third coordinate. I look at the half-cut mark. The mark resumes on the next 11-second count. I'm watching it when it starts, and I want to record the moment of resumption carefully. There is no sound, no preliminary signal, no additional change in the stone vibration before it begins. The interval completes its count, and the mark is still stopped, and then the interval begins again, and the mark is moving. The geometry continues from exactly where it stopped. Both arcs simultaneously, the same smooth material separation from inside the stone that characterized the initial cutting. No fracture, no surface disturbance. The mark forming as though it was always already inside the stone, and the stone is simply revealing it in the sequence the system dictates. The arcs descend, 4 centimeters from center, 3, 2, 1 centimeter from the center mass point on both sides. The character of the cut changes. The arc geometry narrows toward the center point, and then, rather than the arcs meeting each other, each arc reaches its terminal position and stops at the correct distance. Not touching. Approaching a point they are designed to approach, but not complete. Because the center mass point is not the intersection of the arcs. It is the third element. The stone cuts the third mark separately. It begins at the center mass point itself. From the amber-lit point that has been waiting since the guidelines first illuminated, and it extends downward. A single vertical element, short, precise, descending from the center point toward the bottom of the fitting geometry. The third mark is not a curve. It is not an arc. It is a line, a plumb line, a mark that goes straight down from the point between the two arcs and terminates in a clean horizontal cap. The consequence mark is complete. Two arcs descending from the outer edges of the fitting, one vertical mark rising from the center, all three meeting at a point that is now filled with amber light, so steady and even that it does not look like a glow at all. It looks like the stone is that color, like the stone has always been that color at this depth, like the mark was always there and we have only just been allowed to see it. I look at it for a long time. Hannah says, very quietly, "It's the same as the anchor mark." I ask her what she means. She says, in the syntax section, the third point in the three convergent structure, the one I was using to read the grammar. She is looking at the completed mark and then at the organized marks to our right and back again. The third element in that structure is the same form, a line with a cap. She pauses. In the syntax marks, that element means, or implies, I can't read it directly, that whatever the statement describes has been confirmed, not completed, confirmed. The mark says, this is true. I look at the completed consequence mark. Two arcs and a line, the statement the stone was preparing to make since before the archive existed to catalog this site, the consequence of a condition that has now been met. I look at Maren, still standing in the third position. She is looking at the mark. Her expression has the quality of someone recognizing something they have been waiting to see for a long time without being certain they would ever see it. Not surprise. Something more durable than surprise. The three frequencies are still running underfoot. I count the base interval. 11 seconds, steady, present. The amber light fills the completed mark. I look at the completed mark and I look at the fitting around it, and I look at the organized syntax section, and I think about what Hannah said, confirmed, not completed, and I think about what condition the stone has just confirmed is true. What the consequence the stone just wrote is the consequence of, and I cannot read the syntax marks, and I do not know what the statement says, but I know we were part of it. The three of us standing here, two keys and one unregistered presence, completing a geometry that was prepared before the archive existed to catalog it. The system did not record our participation. It required it. There is a difference. I reach for my recorder to make sure it is still running. The stone vibration changes. Not the interval. The interval holds. Not the frequencies. All three continue. The stone vibration changes in a way I cannot categorize from any previous documented behavior. A pulse, singular, much stronger than the interval rhythm, moving upward through the rock shelf from whatever depth this stone connects to and passing through my boots and up through my body. One pulse, then nothing. Then the 11-second interval resumes as though the pulse did not occur. Maren takes one step back from the third position. The stone does not respond to her departure. The three frequencies hold. The amber mark holds. The interval holds. She looks at me. She says, "The record is made." She says it the way she says everything. Procedural, without weight. But she is looking at the completed mark in the stone, and the expression that was on her face when the mark finished. That quality of someone seeing something they had waited a long time to see has not entirely left. I look at the mark. I look at the syntax section to the right of the fitting. I look at the organized marks that Hannah has spent days analyzing. The statement that the stone has been building towards since before we arrived. The argument the prepared section was always meant to complete. The consequence mark is the last mark in the sequence. The sentence is finished. I do not know what it says. Hannah is already at the syntax section, looking at the full sequence from left to right for the first time, with all elements present. She reads slowly. She moves along the face at the pace of someone parsing a grammar rather than scanning a text, stopping at specific marks, checking relationships, building from the structural elements she has already decoded toward the elements she has not. She reaches the completed consequence mark at the end of the sequence. She reads it. She reads the whole sequence again from the beginning. Then she turns to me and she opens her mouth to speak, and the stone pulse comes again, stronger this time, and the amber light goes out.